book lovers. It is G-Swiss here, and I'm here today to talk about my favorite characters of 2022. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday topic, and I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. And in this week's topic, we essentially get to gush about our favorite book characters that we read about this year. And this one is always particularly exciting for me because I pretty much, once again, get to do a time capsule of the book characters I essentially fell in love with. Have any further ways to explain it? I'm pretty much just going to gush about the favorite people I met through fiction. So I guess without further ado, let's get straight into gushing about these book characters together. First of all, I want to bring up Amarande and Luca, who are the main couple of the Kingdom of Sand and Sky trilogy. The third book, The King Will Kill You, came out this year. I don't know whether I've put them both on favorite character lists of years previously, but what I do know is that they definitely stood out to me this year because I read the full trilogy this year. I absolutely adored it, and a big highlight of reading this trilogy was definitely Amarande and Luca's relationship, how wholesome it was at the end of the day. Amarande is a very fiery character. She's very angry for very good reason. Unfortunately, she's very much oppressed in this society who doesn't want her to be a ruler based on the fact that she is a female, even though she is the rightful heir to the throne. And then Luca is just a cinnamon roll of a character that very much balances her out very well. He's someone who doesn't like to confront at times, and yeah, that can come to a fault, but at the very same time, he's very kind, very sweet, and he wants to be able to lead, but he also wants to be able to lead fairly. And I just love their dynamic so much. I also love that as a couple, they challenge each other. They're not a stale couple. They're very different from each other. But also what I really appreciate about this dynamic is that Amarande chooses to learn off of Luca, and Luca chooses to learn off of Amarande. This is such a healthy relationship. The next characters I have to bring up on my favorites list for this year, hands down, have to be Hades and Persephone of Lore Olympus. I do like renditions of Hades and Persephone stories and whatnot, but oh my goodness, the Lore Olympus versions of them are the most wholesome. They are so cute. I am in love with both of them, and I cannot stop obsessing over these two. I'm also very much happy that I got Camilo into this webtoon because we were pretty much gushing about how wholesome it was. And I also love that I can do that with almost the entire book community at this point because Lore Olympus is very much popular and very hyped, and I have to say that it is 100% worth the hype. If you don't want to pick it up because of the hype, what are you doing? Please just ignore the hype. Just see whether it's a story for you. Because yes, I too was intimidated by the hype, and I absolutely fell in love with the story and these characters. And unfortunately, there are characters in here that are very unlikable due to some circumstances. There are trigger warnings for this series. I'll put them up on the screen here. So if you are wanting to read this, just go into it with caution. But Hades and Persephone, their dynamic, their friendship, and their potential romantic relationship, oh my goodness, I love it. And I also love that it is a slow burn, even though it is somewhat torturesome for me personally. And speaking of wholesomeness, I have to bring up Tatsu, who is the house husband in The Way of the House Husband. This manga series is absolutely hilarious. I know that not everybody loves it. Some people feel like this series is mid or it's overhyped, but let me tell you, it's just a fun time if you ever need a distraction. The Way of the House Husband is so funny, it will give you a distraction. Tatsu is hilarious, and honestly, I just mostly love him because I love how unique his character is. He's essentially a former Yakuza boss turned house husband, and he takes his house husband work really seriously. He's not playing around at all, and he's telling people not to play around. There's a way of being a house husband that you must follow, and he's the master of that. I have so much respect for him. Reading this series for his character alone is such a good time. I love the Way of the House Husband series, and I continuously read it because I love following Tatsu's adventures. I also love the little side quests with the cat in here. There's a hamster that pops up later on in the series. Like, I just love this series. The characters are cool, but Tatsu is the one who makes it great. And next, I'd like to bring up Wrath from Kingdom of the Wicked, the entire trilogy. I swear, it probably took me up until the end of Kingdom of the Cursed and Kingdom of the Feared to absolutely adore Wrath, like the rest of the fandom does. Now, I found it very odd that so many people liked Wrath and found Emilia annoying when I felt like Wrath didn't really do much in the series. Like, yes, okay, he was like hot and he was charming and whatnot, but like, I did not feel like he was doing much much more than being like a romantic love interest. But then I started to understand his character and where he came from as I reread the series, and then as I read Kingdom of the Feared, I fell in love with Wrath. I would give Emilia an honorary mention because I do love Emilia, and Emilia, because we're in her head the entire series, we essentially know where she's coming from all the time. The thing is, I put her on last year's favorite character list, so I'm kind of like excluding her from this list, but she's also an honorary mention. This all being said, I didn't dislike Wrath the first time I read the series. However, I just did not understand why people loved him so much. And I finally got it when I approached Kingdom of the Feared, and I had fallen in love with him, and I want more books with Wrath. If Carrie Maniscalco does not write any spin-offs, I really don't know what to do. I feel like this series is very much deserving of a spin-off series. I also want to give a special shout out to the Chainsaw Men characters. At least the three main characters, Denji, Aki, and Power. Initially, I did not like Denji. I just did not understand why he was so degen. I actually love him a lot more as I continue on with the series. I'm like, oh man, I feel for you, Denji. Power, I was unsure what to think about her at first, but honestly, I love her. Like, she's my fave. And Aki, he's so... he's such a sweetie. I just love the main friendship in this series so much. And as arc 1 ends, it breaks my heart. Like, I'm sorry. Like, for anybody who hasn't finished arc 1 yet, I'm sorry for the potential pain you will go through because, I mean, I did. I went through a lot of pain and a lot of suffering after finishing Chainsaw Man Volume 11, or, I mean, Volume 10 was just so bad. But overall, I love this series so much. I love the main cast of characters. I also love some of the side characters. I mean, shout out to Kobeni. I like Kobeni. I think Chainsaw Man pulls onto your heartstrings the most because you do get attached to the characters. I used to encourage people not to get attached to the characters, but I mean, at some point I just could not help it with Chainsaw Man because the characters are so different, but they work well together. They're just all fun to follow. But yes, the story gets incredibly sad. So that is all I'm gonna say. Next, I have to bring up my favorite characters from the Fair Isle trilogy / universe. I specifically want to spotlight Evelyn, Aspen, Prince Franco, and Ember. Prince Franco and Ember have their romantic side story in Heart of the Raven Prince, I believe, which is a spin-off to the Fair Isle trilogy. But Evelyn and Aspen's story is the main story in To Carve a Fey Heart and in the Fair Isle trilogy. Once again, it's one of my favorite trilogies of all time, but I particularly am fascinated in Evelyn's character development. It's very interesting. She goes from someone who is very selfless and very kind and very reserved. She took on a medical profession, but she goes on from being that to having to be a Fey ruler. And overall, that's a very fascinating concept because at times, I have to say it, Evelyn can be toxic. And I think a lot of Goodreads reviews have pointed this out as well, especially in the way that she used someone's true name at some point in the third book. And you know what? I completely understand there. I wasn't okay with what she did there. She becomes a very cruel character in the third book. And it's a very interesting development journey that she's gone on, and I think Tessandra Odette did that kind of for a reason, because in order to succeed within the Fae courts, you have to be cruel. But Evelyn, deep down inside, is a kind person who does have some humanity to her. And the entire series kind of explores what it is like to remember to be human. I love the message of the Fair Isle trilogy so much. I reckon that as much as the Cruel Prince series is a great series, the Fair Isle trilogy does what the Cruel Prince tried to do, but it does it a little bit better. And I reckon that it deserves just as much hype as the Cruel Prince, in my opinion. I love this series so much. I love these characters so much. Prince Franco and Ember, their romance was absolutely beautiful, and they're such a highlight in the series. Like, as much as I have loved the side romances, I just wanted to see Prince Franco's happiness because he was in the Fair Isle trilogy, but his romance ended up being in a spin-off. I am so happy we got his happiness this year. Ember is probably my other favorite main protagonist beside Evelyn. And another cast of characters I would love to give a special shout out to that completely made my reading year this year, the Diviners cast. I love the Diviners series by Libba Bray, and I am obsessed with the Diviners cast. Yes, I love Evie. Yes, I love Jericho. Yes, I love Sam. Yes, I love Memphis. Yes, I love Theta. I love Ling. Henry. I love the entire cast. I find them very fascinating because all of them are very much unique, and I can definitely see that Libba took her time writing each of them individually and getting to know them. I love the characters in this series so much, and I think my main concern going into the series was that I was going to essentially wait for a new character POV to pop up. For example, I mean, Evie has been introduced as like one of the main protagonists. I thought that I was going to want to follow Evie the entire time and not focus on Memphis's story. But that never really happened to me because because I was fascinated in everyone's story. And I was also very much fascinated in the side characters' stories as well, all the villains that just popped out of nowhere. I loved the little interludes, the interruptions in the story. I pretty much just appreciated this entire story, and I think that comes down to Libba Bray being an excellent writer and knowing about all the characters that she writes very well. Libba Bray did an excellent job at keeping majority of the series consistent. The only part of the series I don't feel like is as consistent as with the rest of the series has 100% gotta be the King of Crows. Like, as much as the King of Crows is still a good addition to the story, there was a character and a subplot that was introduced last minute to kind of wrap the story up, and I wasn't necessarily okay with that. It just did not feel as consistent. It just did not feel like the 10 years of waiting and build-up was meant to lead to that, but it did. This all being said, I love this series for the most part. I still have fond memories of it. I feel like these characters have become my family. I really appreciate them. I still think about them to this day. I still dream about them, and that's saying a lot. The Diviners cast have 100% got to be some of the best characters I experienced this year. And the next cast of characters I would like to bring up as some of my favorite characters of the year. They've got to be the entire cast of the Four Horsemen series by Laura Falasa. And I like these characters not because they are pure cinnamon rolls. I appreciate them for character study purposes. I'm actually fascinated in how all the Four Horsemen work in different ways, and how essentially all of them kind of hold true to their own name but have their own personalities. I feel like at first Pestilence was driven in one specific way, War has a soft spot to him, Famine has no mercy whatsoever, and to top it all off, Death is very interesting because he sees not living as a mercy. I found all of them very much fascinating for character study purposes, but also, like, I'm not gonna lie, I did kind of love them in a way. I have a very twisted relationship with the Four Horsemen. I love the love interests that are in the series as well, like the actual protagonists who we're actually kind of like in their heads because we have their POV. I personally love following their perspective. It's not the ideal situation to go through, you know, when you're like with a horseman, and yes, they're pretty much eliminating people left, right, and center, whatnot, but I find it very fascinating for them to have to come to the conclusion of realizing that choosing humanity is the most important of all, and essentially what is going to redeem them at the end of the day. Like, do they deserve to be redeemed? It's very fascinating stuff because then you end up getting attached to these villains. Like, they are truly villains because they are truly eliminating people. And you also ask yourself the question, are they beyond redemption? Or because they've learned what it's like to be human, is that enough? Very interesting stuff, and this series was definitely a highlight for me. It's a series that kept me up for nights. It made me think about a lot, especially about life and death, and making sure that I never take anything for granted. And the final book characters I'd like to give a shout out to today are some of my favorite characters that I read in possibly one of the best series I've read like ever. That, my friends, is the Varganer trilogy by Laura Falasa. Yes, I'm referring to Desmond and Calypso and Temper. I really loved Temper, who is Calypso's best friend in the series, but I specifically love Calypso's and Desmond's dynamic because at times they also play good cop, bad cop with each other in terms of investigating. I love that they both live some sort of double life where they're in like the regular world being PIs, like private investigators, and in the other world they rule a kingdom. And I also love how Temper gets to experience that through them as well. I'm not gonna lie, I actually really wish I had a separate book series that followed Temper because she was definitely a highlight of the series, and I appreciate how supportive she is of Calypso. And I also love that Temper and Desmond also eventually get along because they both have Calypso's best interests at heart. I love supportive friends and supportive love interests. Like, we love to see it. Overall, what I appreciate about Desmond and Calypso specifically is that at the very beginning of this book series, Calypso is more happy-go-lucky around Desmond, and Desmond is very closed off. But over time, there's a before and after POV situation going on here. In the after, Calypso is a lot more closed off, and Desmond is a lot more open and lovely and welcoming. Their individual dynamics in a relationship over time in the series is so fascinating. I personally love Rhapsodic because I love seeing their development individually as characters and how they started off. Yes, it is questionable at times, and no, it's not completely innocent at all. However, I love how Laura Falasa told the story. I still think about Calypso and Desmond. They live in my mind rent-free. I recently reread this trilogy just to confirm it was one of my favorite series of the year, and I can confirm that. Stay tuned for my top 22 series of the year where I put it into its official ranking. So yes, I'm obsessed with these two characters, and I also have to give Temper a shout shout out because she's an amazing friend, and once again, I believe that she deserves her own spin-off. Will Laura give it to us? I don't know. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay till the end of the video, leave me the pink heart emoji with the sparkles. I love that emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it into double. Started out with half and I flipped it into double.